Sveiki visi, malonu, kad prisijungėte šiandien prie mūsų į mūsų.
Good morning. I'm glad to welcome you to our annual Baltpool Biomass Day. First of all, I would like to give you a couple of welcoming words, both in Lithuania and in English, because we have some guests who have joined us both from Lithuania and from abroad.
Here join us on our Baltpool Biomass Day. At the beginning, I will speak in two languages, Lithuanian and English, just to translate the main organizational information. So bear with me for a second and I will let you through the information. Taigi, mūsų susitikimas šiandien yra verčiamas tiesiogiai į anglų kalbą.
Our meeting is simultaneously interpreted into English. In order to use this feature on Zoom, you should click interpretation icon, a globe icon, and select the language you want to listen in. For this, you have to use computer audio.
Simultaneously into English language. We will speak in Lithuanian, but the translation is available there. So to use this option in the Zoom window, on the menu side, just click on the interpretation button and choose English language. And you will switch into the translation. It is possible as well to mute original voice, so you will hear only the translation. What is important to use computer audio to use this option.
During the event, you can ask us questions. Please enter them into the Slido app, on slido.com, or if somebody has the mobile app, enter the participant code Baltpool. I'm going to administer the question. If I see that the question is relevant at a very specific moment, I will read it out loud immediately. If the question is more of a general nature, then we'll have the Q&A session after the presentation.
During the presentation, you can interact with us and ask your questions via slido.com webpage or application if you have the mobile version by using participants code Baltpool. If the question is relatable to exactly the slide which we are talking right now, I will voice them right away and we will answer them. If it's more generic question or on the broader scale, I will ask them after whole the presentation. So, nelaukiant toliau,
so without further ado, I would like to introduce our participants in the studio. So we have our sales director Vaidotas Jonutis and commercial director Tomas Jolutas.
So today with me is I have two my colleagues, Vaidotas Jonutis, our head of trading, and commercial director Tomas Jolutas. Not waiting further ado, nelaukiant toliau, atiduodu žodį Vaidotui.
So without further ado, I will give the floor to Vaidotas, who is going to give the presentation on the upcoming heating season perspective. So Vaidas, the floor is yours.
Taip, iš tikrųjų, periodiškai susitinkam pasikalbėti.
So we meet regularly to chat about what's going on in the biofuel market. The last meeting was more pleasant, I'd say, because it was just before the summer began. Some 6 months of good weather were ahead of us, and now the next 6 months will be a bit colder. But the most interesting thing is that usually before we meet, we more or less know what we want to tell you, and some 3 weeks ahead of the meeting, we know what we're going to talk about. So I can tell you that at the beginning of September, when we invited you to the meeting, and the last 4 weeks, well, the situation has changed quite rapidly, and it is a good thing that it did. We see more contracts in the market, people are getting ready for the season, so this is what we are going to talk about. Well, we prepared the slideshow some 3 days ago, and yesterday we saw some transactions. So some slides may not be exactly up to the date. I will tell you which ones, but the essence will be more or less relevant. So let's begin with this slide, for example. I just want to show at this moment in October, at this moment last year, 2023, and right now, 2024, what were the trends and what are the trends? So this is how a certain commodity looked like a year ago, what were the results at that time, and in the red you see the results for a specific commodity today. So the graph was updated yesterday, and what we can see from this graph, in the energy commodity market, the last year, at least for the sellers, were not very successful, because if we had a broader look beginning from the electricity, in France and in Germany, the major markets, in Europe, of course, it's not our market, it's Europe as a whole, so prices have been decreasing significantly, heating oil as well. Also, the CO2 emission permits are important. Their prices reduced, and this was not a trend 1 year ago. Brent, coal, all these things are very much different. Of course, we remember all the prices increased after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and last year we already saw some reductions of prices, and this year the situation is even simpler. Of course, we are mostly interested in the TTF gas, its price. When we started getting ready for this event, the price decrease was around 15%. Now it's not as drastic. Yesterday, the price was 37.89 euros per megawatt hour, and it is very similar to that of 1 year ago. The difference is very minimum. Lumber indexes have not changed for a couple of years. It is more or less related to the economic situation, because lumber is more related to economic indexes rather than commodity prices, but we participating in the biofuel market, well, we are interested in the lumber trends. So recently, this parameter, both last year and this year, it has not really changed. So there is no point of talking about in great detail. And the last indicator I included because I found it interesting is the containerized freight index. Last year the prices were reduced very much, and this was still linked to the COVID lockdowns, because before 2023 the base was very low, so the price reduction was very low. But this year we see that this index has grown very much. It is related to freight transportation, and it might give some ideas for those who are thinking about exporting biofuels, about these trends, because this index, it affects Baltic Dry Index as well, which is related to cargo transportation. When it comes to the situation in the Baltic states in the beginning of the season, well, these are firewood prices in cubic meters or euros per a cubic meter, and for every country we see the price in 2023 and this year. And for example, in Latvia and in Estonia we have very similar trends, since the prices are estimated using different methods. In Lithuania, we are using spot market prices, also national forest enterprises prices. For Latvia, we have the Mecca Institute service, which may involve the transportation costs as well. In the case of Estonia, the price is estimated based on the national forestry companies' supply prices, which are related to long-term contracts that were entered into 6 months ago. But the prices are very, very similar in every case. Doesn't matter the methodology.
Padarėme po to, kai tiesiog netyčia pamatėm, jog Lietuvoje kainos faktiškai yra identiškos lyginant rugpjūtį su rugpjūčiu.
So I just want to show the prices are quite identical, but now the heating season has begun, the prices are increasing.
Šitas grafikas labai atspindi ir kodėl būtent šiais metais yra tokia situacija.
But this also reflects this year's situation. Now, if we had the look at the next slide, we would see different trends. Even though we see that sorry, the interpreters are hearing some voices of people who don't turn off the microphone, and it's very difficult to interpret. But to continue, both the graphs are crossing in a certain point, but if we had a look at a long-term trend, sorry, the interpreters cannot hear anything because Mindaugas is with his microphone on. So in Estonia, the price is very stable. But in Lithuania and Latvia, the trend is changing. And the prices are now starting to grow. I'm not saying that we have entered a new stage altogether, but the things we can see from these two different graphs possibly show that the floor that has been being created in the last year and a half, well, we may see some changes. Maybe somebody wants to add something? Yes, for example, if last year everyone believed that the prices are going to decrease, but we are not witnessing similar situation, it seems we're at the same position, but the expectations are now a bit different for the upcoming heating season, and the emotions are different. Yes, it's hard to say that we may see some recovery in the wood lumber sector as a whole, but when it comes to biofuel, they have not hit the rock bottom, and the market recovery is being felt. For example, yesterday I added the index value in Lithuania, and it was around 45. So this crossing point has been achieved by yesterday. And I'm interested in how the situation will develop in the future, because firewood is firewood, and it has an impact on the price ceiling of the biofuel market. The next slide is, well, we tend to show it because it's very primitive, but it shows the price of biofuel in euros per a megawatt hour in the market, and the price of firewood in euros per cubic meter. And if you overlap these two graphs, they seem interdependent, but the dimensions, of course, are different. But if you put them all in one graph, these fluctuations are nearly identical. The correlation between these two indicators is huge. So what we can see, what we want to talk about is
pastarųjų metų va šitų linijų išsiskyrimas.
The divergence of these few lines at the end of the graph. In Lithuania, the long-term contracts are around this level. Maybe in today's presentation it's not so important, but we can clearly see that the firewood price and biofuel price for long-term contracts has gone their separate ways. In this graph, we can link it to this axis and see how much did biofuel cost historically when firewood prices, which, as I've said, are very important. So how much the biofuel costed. So these dots are the price of firewood in Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. And if you link it to the next axis, we may try to forecast the future. And we can clearly see that these dots are a bit higher for all countries rather than the biofuel prices of summer. Of course, in Lithuania, the situation of Latvia and Estonia is a bit different, but the trend is still pretty much the same. Firewood price seems to be higher than usual. Thomas, would you like to add something? Because you always want to say something regarding this issue. Yeah, the increasing capabilities decrease the prices in the biofuel market, but I would like to say that we have to get back to the previous situation as quickly as possible, or there may be some raw materials correlations, but these divergences should not happen in the future. We often like to talk with each other at work, looking at these graphs, because the actual market is a bit further from us. You are aware of it more, but all these figures symbolize a certain, well, indicate the upcoming changes or some lack of sustainability, as Thomas has said, and there may be some surpluses of production capabilities or something, but the situation is not very clear.
Now, when it comes to the three Baltic countries regarding the prices, you can see the situation last winter. You can see how spot markets form. You can see that the prices in Latvia are usually the highest. They are the lowest in Estonia. In summer, there are no miracles, and you can see steady price decreases. This year, prices remain a little bit higher, but I don't think that we should draw any long-term trends from this. However, now, according to the long-term contracts for the next heating season, we can make certain presumptions. When I drew up this diagram a couple of weeks ago, the lines were very close to each other. However, now, after entering the latest data, I can see that the prices in Latvia and Estonia are now different from those in Lithuania. Lithuania is the green line, and there have been increases in Latvia and Estonia. And I believe that this price difference between those curves is not special in any way. And I don't think that Lithuanian suppliers will start delivering their products to Latvia. This might be visible in border regions. However, we can see that the situation is already changing and the commodities are expensive. Thomas? Yes, I would like to mention that these are weighted prices. And in Lithuania, we had certain contracts that were concluded earlier. That's why they are cheaper. So this diagram does not reflect the real situation. And I believe that contracts for the next heating season are more expensive everywhere. Yes, the contracts that were concluded during the summer season have a lot of weight, still have a lot of weight, and the current long-term contracts are usually for higher prices. Okay, so that was the situation in the three countries. When we look at price trends over the years, we can see that Estonia is a particular market. Usually, the prices in Estonia revolve around the same level. There have been some changes over the years, but in general, the Estonian prices are rather stable. If we look at Lithuania and Latvia, the situation is different. And at the moment, it seems that we have the lowest biomass prices over the last 4 years. In Lithuania, the decrease compared to last year is 12%. In Latvia, the decrease is 16%. The general trend is that we are coming to a different price level compared to the year 2000, and we are not counting the years of the pandemic and other years. Well, previously the price of biomass was 15. Now that price has stabilized at around 20. And I believe that this is the lowest price possible. That is our view. Maybe Thomas would like to add something. Yes, the war was a very important factor. And then if we look at the increasing wages in the lumber sector, I don't see any reasons for that price to change significantly, because over the last 4 years, we saw significant increases in wages, especially in the forestry sector. I believe that that increase was fourfold. Yes, that increase was very significant, and it did not reflect the situation in the general economy. The slide that you are seeing now was shown to you last spring. The main idea behind this slide is that the previous year was atypical because we saw significant price decreases. This was related to the spot market. The spot market was disrupted, and we were afraid that the market participants would follow the habits and the behavior trends that they acquired during the previous year. So the general view was that spot was always cheaper, that there is a surplus on the raw materials market, and that the buyer is a king. And this led to certain simplified behavioral trends. Buyers thought that they should have fewer long-term contracts, and that the spot market is always cheaper. Since that was the situation during the previous 2 years, we thought that the buyers would follow this behavior. We also saw that the countries around, when looking at the countries around the Baltic Sea, we can see that the prices are most favorable in the Baltic states. The sellers are also changing their behavior. They usually reconsider their purchase strategies. They don't have so much inventories as before. I believe that you can see the same trend, but when I talk to the sellers, they usually tell me that their inventories are lower, but there are also more participants on the market. So this means that the level of inventories is lower per participant because there are no more entities on the market. And there is also this idea that you can have long-term contracts without even having any inventories, but this leads to certain problems. And the problems are that we become very dependent on the spot market and on the liquidity of spot markets. It also leads to small inventories, which in turn are a cause for certain systemic problems. Because it is enough to have one very cold weekend, and this would drive the price up by 20%. So those were the forecast trends, but not many of them came true. Compared to the previous years, that is 2021, 2022, and 2023, this year we have the lowest number of long-term contracts. The level of contracting is about 40%. If we divide everything by quarters, and if we look at the last quarter of this year and the first quarter of the next year, we see a completely different phenomenon. We can see that buyers have started splitting their buying portfolios into two parts. That is the first part of winter and the second part of winter. And we believe that today they will start buying for the second part of the coming winter. So the contracting level is about 40%, and the majority of contracts is for the first part of the winter, and the remaining 30% is for the second part of the winter. And I believe that Thomas will want to say something here. Well, I would like to remind you that the supply of biomass is very closely dependent on the price. And if we see that there is a lack of biomass, the only way out is to increase the price. And the preparations for the heating season, if again we look at the same slide, is determined by this lower price. There was this expectation to buy biomass at lower prices, and there was a tendency to wait. And this was based on the previous experience, because buyers believe that the spot market will remain low. Yes, I'm very happy that you started talking about this, because I'm going to show you the next slide. So my next slide shows long-term contracts in different years. You can see that in 1 year, so if you see a blue curve, this means that the spot contracts were more expensive. And you can see that over the last 2 years, the long-term contracts were more expensive. Market participants were observing market trends during the previous years, but this year the situation changed, and you can see that the short-term contracts became more expensive than the long-term contracts that were concluded last summer. So you see this change in the trend. These are only the first steps, and maybe it's too early to speak about it as a trend, as a new trend. However, we see certain developments, and last Tuesday we saw what the situation on the exchange was. This might not confirm the beginning of a new trend, but it is going to be very interesting to observe, and we'll wait and see whether the trend is for the market to change every 2 years. Well, I think we can speak about trending in the expectations. Well, if you become disappointed with one trend, you shift the risk to the other party in the transaction. And I believe that at the moment the buyers are rather calm and they are not willing to pay an additional price. Yes, but it is not yet clear how this will develop. When I speak to the suppliers, and again, we'll wait and see, but the suppliers, especially those from larger companies, tell me that they expect an increase in the prices. However, I can feel this trend every year, and the spot market is this cherry on the cake, which allows you to earn during the season, to earn more during the season. And if you are lucky, you can earn more, you can earn a lot. If you are not so lucky, you end up with zero at the end of the season. However, the suppliers tell me that they expect prices to rise. This is yet another slide that you have seen before. You can see the price of biomass on the exchange and the prices in the warehouse, and we have set the following indicator. I believe that everyone agrees that biomass is currently too cheap. It should cost about 24. This is the current price, and this is the current feedstock price. I monitor various chats on the internet in the relevant channels. We know the cost of preparing biomass, and we know that forest owners receive almost nothing today, or the prices are as low that forest owners engage in logging simply when they want to clean the forest, and there is no economic interest in that. So the cost of production is about 10 euros per solid square cubic meter. And we can also see that the products come from the most easily managed forest, the most easily accessible forest. So the participants are aiming for the lowest hanging fruit.
So we know what the price consists of. 50% of the biofuel price is more or less, and another 50% is administration cost, amortization, salaries, maintenance, VAT possibly, in some countries like Lithuania, which is zero right now. But we must remember the fact that this black part, which is called variable costs in this case, it can also be divided into similar layers on the supply level. Of course, the raw material consists of 80 to 70% of the final biofuel price, but it also consists of salaries, of amortization, and so on and so forth. We often consider this a single unit, but this share and the impact of the biofuel prices, well, it comprises around half of the heating price that we always talk about, namely what a consumer and user pays for a service. A bit more about prices across different cities of the Baltic State region. Latvia and Estonia have a different kind of regulation. In these countries, the price is fixed for the whole upcoming season, and I'm not sure if it can be changed during the season. Possibly yes, if the economic situation changes, but usually the price is fixed for every month. In Lithuania, in green, we see prices of major Lithuanian cities only for October. And for October, it seems that the prices are decreasing all over Lithuania compared to last year's October, more or less to the extent that the biofuel prices is decreasing. In Latvia, also the heating prices have decreased to a significant extent, except for Liepaja. Elsewhere, the prices have reduced to a more significant extent. I saw in the Latvian media an article that Latvia allegedly is paying the highest price in the EU, but of course they compare it to the purchasing power, not the absolute price, because if you had a look at the prices in the Scandinavian markets in Warsaw, they are much higher than in the Baltic cities or towns. But I think that comparing this to a purchasing power parity, well, it makes some sense, but if you had a look at anything at bread prices, let's say, our products, any kind of products are the highest in terms of purchasing power. Well, this is because the salaries in the Baltic states are lower than elsewhere in Europe. And Stockholm, Helsinki, Warsaw, these cities have a higher heating power prices. We discussed this with Thomas before the event, whether my estimations are correct, because in these major cities, larger cities, the heating prices are separated into several parts. For example, supply price is separated. It's similar to electricity prices in our region. Generation, production are separated. So the same goes in Stockholm. And that's why the figures are higher than in the Baltic states. So I think we just have to be glad about the fact that this year will not be the year when at the Christmas Eve table we will discuss high heating prices. We'll have some more pleasant things to talk about. And the last slide I want to show you. Well, we started checking what has an impact on the biofuel consumption during every season in Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, and the so-called heating degree days. Every year we estimate the weather temperature compared to 15 degrees inside. Well, this is the index, and maybe it should be 18 degrees. That's the measurement we use in Lithuania. In this case, the base is 15 degrees, but this does not have a major impact because it shows the differences among October, November, March, and April in all these three countries, because these 4 months have the highest impact on the biofuel consumption across the heating season. Because December, January, and February, the biofuel boilers work at full pace regardless of the outside temperature, so the consumption is more or less similar because we add peak or reserve equipment which uses gas to compensate for the differences. But for example, here in October and today, heating season started in Lithuania. One of Lithuanian cities started central heating. So today is the 2nd of October. It's hard to remember another year when we started so early, especially having in mind that last year we still have summer. We had open windows here in Lithuania. So with this beautiful note, Thomas, I would like to give the floor to you. So my last idea is, well, to repeat what we wanted to tell you. Well, the biomass prices are low. This message is very clear. The price statistically is very, very low, but firewood prices are growing, and there are no guarantees that such stability will be maintained for a long period of time, what politicians maybe expect, or heating producers expect that. In Europe, the situation is quite calm. The beginning of full-scale invasion of Ukraine reoriented all the heating and electricity producers to look for alternative sources. The preparation for the heating season begins much earlier than usually. Last year, the warehouses had some reserve gas that allows us to stabilize the situation right now. So our message we want to send you is you should diversify your portfolios as much as possible, regardless of the fact whether you're a private heating producer or a licensed system operator, because diversification allows the market to work in a similar regime, and excessive profits disappear. If you want to speculate, you're free to choose, but speculating the consumers' money, well, it's not the best thing to do. We should have less of it. But I would like to say that licensed operators are getting ready for the season much more seriously than private players, and it is related to regulation, of course. So that's it from my side, I think. We will not avoid price fluctuations, and diversification is the only way forward. We're going to repeat this from year to year, especially since it's not very difficult to diversify. You don't need to use some banking instruments or something. Just purchase different period products in the market, and in this way we can decrease the systematic risk in the system. So thank you very much for your attention. Maybe we have some questions. Not so far. Your presentation must have been very clear and constructive. Yes, everyone is feeling like a Buddhist. Everyone is very calm, but don't get too calm. Don't get relaxed. So if that's it, I think you had one more slide you wanted to show. Oh, that's correct. Another slide. Yeah, I have to boast about myself. So between these two last presentations, Baltpool reached 1 billion turnover in June. We celebrated this amongst ourselves, but we want to celebrate with you. So we sold 54 megawatt hours of fuels, around 770,000 trucks of wood chips transported, and around 6 million households. For example, this is how many households there are in Madrid or Toronto, in huge cities. Of course, you don't need to heat Madrid. I didn't think about this, but you need to heat Toronto. So this is how much we sold. 1 billion is a lot. We are glad about this. And we are glad that all of you are with us. So on this note, I would like to say thank you all for joining us today, for being with us regularly, for criticizing us, but that's what makes us grow and improve. So before I finish, I'm sorry, the recording of this event and presentation will be shared with every participant, both website and in our newsletter.
So for now, this is all what we have. And just for the information that the presentation which Vaidotas has shown today and the recording of this event will be shared on our channel Baltpool in YouTube, as well on our webpage, and we will share it with you via newsletter.
Okay, we have one question after all. So before we leave, we have one question. Do we see some statistics, some changes in the sellers' statistics? Okay, that's a good point. We always talk about this in our spring event, but I think that this year there will be major changes in the top 10 sellers. New players are coming, the old ones are changing their strategies, they are selling in different areas. So I think we are going to see this, we feel this right now. And it's not something extremely pleasant, even though it seems that competition ensures that somebody always is doing a certain activity, but in this case we see these trends, and not everyone is happy with the current market conditions. Market is very competitive from the supply side. Yes, even Remigijus Lapinskas, every one of you knows them. He said that there is no competition elsewhere like there is in biofuel market. So I agree with him. Thank you, Vaidas, for your answer. Thank you for the question. And once again, thank you all and see you next time. Thank you.